So welcome, we're glad to have you. My name is Janelle Mercer. I'll be the main instructor for this class, but I also have Ben Rock with me. We're both technology trainers at the Wichita Public Library, and Ben will be here to help if we have to kind of watch for questions and also for any technical issues we might have. As we're going along, if you have questions, please feel free to use the chat to ask questions. We'll both be trying to watch that for your questions so we can answer those as we go. So we'll be watching for that. And if you have a question we might be talking about, I may not answer that right away. I may say that we'll be getting to that, but please feel free to ask questions. We want to make this customized. And since this is on Zoom, the questions really help us keep it interesting and also keep the flow going, so it makes it more like an in-person class. So we like to have questions, so please ask those as we go. So to create this class, we got a little bit of help from gcflearnfree.org, which is an excellent site. If you haven't been there before, I would suggest you go visit. They have lots of tutorials, and it's gcflearnfree.org. We're specifically got a little bit of help from their Word 2016 lessons, and we will be going over Word 2016 today, just so you know as well. So they're a great resource that we would recommend you looking at for anything. They have tutorials on Facebook, Word, like we mentioned, PowerPoint, Gmail, search engines, that type of thing. So they're a really good site. We also got some help from the Denver Public Library. We're going to be using some of their tutorials that they've used in some of their Word tips. So we appreciate them. They make those available to other libraries to use. So we got some from them as well. And what we're going to be starting with, I'm going to go ahead and open Word, and we're going to do a little review over some parts of the Word, but before we get started, can all of you give me a little bit of, use the chat and tell me some of your experience in Word? Are you a novice? Have you used it quite a bit? Do you feel pretty comfortable with Word? Has it been a while? That type of thing. And you don't have to if you don't want to, but just if you want to give us a little bit of an idea of the level everybody's at, or if there's something specific you'd like to learn today too. Yeah, 25 years. Yeah, I've been using Word since high school myself, so I feel that. And it's changed quite a bit. If you remember, I used to have the greens, I think it was green, and it had, you use dot commands to do everything. It's not as user-friendly as it is now. But some of the things still remain. Okay, so give me a second here. I gotta get the. So just to make sure, can you guys see my desktop? You see like an Excel shortcut and a Word shortcut?
Yes.
Okay, excellent. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and start by opening Word. Just gonna double click on it. And this is what it looks like when you first open it, depending on what your settings are. You have a blank document, that's what we're gonna start with. But you'll also see that you also have these templates that first open up. So these are handy if you wanna create like a resume and you can search for resume. I just kind of wanted to go over this really quick. You can search for resume and it'll bring up some templates. If you're a beginner, I would recommend starting with a simple template that doesn't have a lot of pictures or formatting on it, like this modern chronological resume is a good one to start with. But there's always those templates, there's cards and other templates as well. Those are kind of a good place to get started if you're creating a document. You can also just start with a blank document. So that's what we're going to start with today. I'm going to go ahead and click on blank document. And you'll see when we first open it up that we have our cursor, and you'll see that's blinking, and that's where you can start typing. So you can basically start typing anything, and you'll also notice that, let me increase my screen size here a little bit. You'll also notice up here that you have in Word what is called the ribbon. So this up here with the menus is what Word calls the ribbon. So today we're mostly going to talk about like home, insert, design, not so much, and layout. So that's what we're going to concentrate on today. We will also be talking about the Backstage View or file. So we will get to that as well, and also talk about saving. But we're going to start with the ribbon right here. And you'll notice under the home button, which is where we're going to start, that we have various areas. So this first one is the clipboard, and the clipboard is kind of an imaginary, well, it's not an imaginary, but it's memory space on your computer when you copy or paste anything, which we will be doing. It saves it on your clipboard. So this is the clipboard area. And you'll also notice as you scroll your mouse across any of these icons that you'll have little menus that pop up as well that tell you more about what these icons are. So this is paste and this is format. And then next to this, we also have the font group. So in the font group, that's where we can change what the text looks like. And we'll be going over this more, but you can change the size of the text, the style of the text, and the font. So we'll be talking more about that. But you'll see here that you can change the type of font, the font size. And again, over in this area, if you scroll over, it'll tell you what each of these icons mean. Like this one is font color, so you can change the color of your text. And again, we'll be practicing with these and showing you a little bit more about how to use those. So this is bold and italic and underline. And you may also notice that whenever you're in other Microsoft products like PowerPoint or Excel, that there's similar buttons like this where you can also format text. And you may also see this in other things as well. Like you may also see bold and italic and underline, like in your email and that type of thing when you're typing emails, depending on what product you're using. So next to that, we have the paragraph section. And in here, you can change what your paragraph looks like. You can change the type of alignment here in this area. You can add bullets and numbers. You can also decrease or increase indent, and we're not going to be playing around with that too much today, but that gives you, you can decrease or increase your indent, which comes in handy, and that's more of an advanced thing, but that's there as well. You can also change your shading and add borders and that type of thing. So those are a little bit more advanced. We'll mostly be focusing on bullets and alignment today, and paragraph spacing, which is right here. So you also have styles where you can change the style of your document. Again, that's a little bit more intermediate or advanced, so we probably won't be talking about that as much, but this is here as well. Another thing I want to mention is that I wouldn't be too worried about knowing what all these buttons mean. I think even if you're someone that uses Word quite a bit, a lot of times you use the same buttons over and over again. Like you may never insert a table into Microsoft Word or add borders or that type of thing. So don't be too worried about knowing what each button means. You can always scroll over them and it'll tell you. Or if you don't know how to use something, there's also help. So you can ask it like how to add a bullet, and it'll bring up instructions on how to add bullets and that type of thing. So you can always use the help menu. So don't forget about that. You can also Google things too. So you can open up Google or your favorite search engine and ask how to add a bullet in Word. So keep that in mind. I think people get a little, it's a little overwhelming to see all these menus and think about all the things you can do, but I would stick to building up your knowledge. That's always a good way to learn as you go. Well, we're glad to see you, Rob. Thank you for joining us. So there's also the insert tab, and inside the insert tab, you can insert a table like we were talking about earlier, pictures, that type of thing. And again, this is probably a little bit more advanced. We won't be getting into this too much, but you can feel free to play around with this some if you'd like. There's also design, and we won't be messing with this too much as well, but you can change the design of your document in here. And then we have layout as well. And layout is pretty important. Probably home and layout is probably where a lot of us spend most of our time. Actually, probably more in home when you change the formatting, like changing your font to bold and changing your font type and font style and that type of thing. But in layout, you can also change your margins. So you can have normal margins or narrow margins, that type of thing. You can also set custom margins, and we'll talk more about this. You can also change to print in portrait or landscape. So keep that in mind. That's where that is. You can also do more advanced things like add line numbers and breaks and that type of thing. So that's where all of that is. And the rest of this is more advanced. So we're not going to go into the rest of the tabs that are on the ribbon. But another thing we wanted to talk about is the Backstage View. So to get to the Backstage View, if you click on File, it'll take you in here. And this is where you can find some extra things. But most important of all is this is where you can find Save. If you want to save your document, save as, and also print. So we'll be going over this a little bit more, but just keep in mind that that's where that is. So we'll go back a little bit. And again, that is the Backstage View, and that's File. And then in here, you will find Open. You can also open a document in here, Save and Save As and Print. Probably most of us use Save As, and Print. And we'll talk more about Save and Save As and also the Print as we go along. You can also open a new document in here. So you can click on New and open a new document as well. So you also have that option if you want to work on two documents at the same time. Going to go ahead and go back, and you'll see that now we're back to our document. Just a second, I'm just checking myself to see. Okay, so as we talked, that was kind of a little bit of an overview of the menus inside of Word. And you can see here that you can see my cursor blinking, and you can click wherever you're typing, or wherever you can click and put the cursor wherever you'd like, and it'll start typing. You can use the delete keys. And if you hit enter, it'll take you to the next line automatically. And it doesn't matter where you're at. You can, so I moved my cursor. I just clicked right here, right in front of how. And if you hit enter, it'll bring that down to the next line. Another thing to keep in mind is that you can also, if you want to type a capital letter, you can also use the shift key. And like I did shift and T, and it made a capital T. You can also use caps lock or caps lock, and it'll make everything capitalized. Now, I would be cautious about typing all in caps. Some people consider it as yelling at other people, but it just looks more professional if you just capitalize the first line. So I would not use caps lock unless you're doing something special. Sometimes some business applications have you type all in caps. I know some libraries do that, or some other businesses have you type all in caps for certain things when you're working in certain programs, or even when you're typing certain documents. But mostly we prefer that you use the shift key and capitalize certain letters. Yes. And you also may notice these squiggly lines as well when you're typing. This is the spell check or the grammar check. The grammar check will be a different color, but you'll notice if you right click on this, it will come up with a word suggestion. And for some reason it is not. Okay, let's go ahead. I think it's because I have it in all caps. Let me misspell library here. Oh, and it auto-corrected it for me. I was wrong. The spell check will be in red. So if you notice little squiggly lines, if you click on that, right click on it, it'll bring up word suggestions. So in this case, it wants to spell library correctly with like this. If you click on that, and it'll correct it for you. You can also do spell check under here under review with spelling and grammar. And again, we'll talk about this a little bit more. So that's some basics of we're using a document. There's also the backspace key. So if you put your cursor where you would like to the right of what you'd like to backspace and then hit backspace, it'll delete what you've typed. There is also undo up here at the top. So undo is probably one of my favorite tools. So if you make a mistake, like if I accidentally delete Wichita, I can use undo and Wichita will come back. And this is really nice if you accidentally make a formatting mistake or accidentally delete something you don't want. You can always undo it, which is always very nice. There's also the redo, which will redo what you undid, which comes in handy as well. Another thing to keep in mind is that you can use the mouse to highlight text, and that is an easy way to, to change the formatting on what you type. So if we want to make Wichita Public Library a bigger size, we can select it like we did here. So highlight it. And I've always found that it works best for me if I click at the beginning of the word and then drag my mouse to the end, or sometimes if I start at the end of the word and go forwards, that works as well to highlight the word. And then we can change the font size here. So we made Wichita Public Library bigger. So this is kind of an easy way. I would recommend if you haven't been in Word for a while or it's kind of new to you, just go in and start typing something that doesn't really matter very much and kind of play around. Or if you want to, if it makes more sense to you to type something real, if you type up like something simple like a letter to a family member, or if you're working on a resume, start typing your resume and practice with it. It's always nice to kind of learn when you don't have a lot of pressure. So I would start working on something that and learn as you go, something easy that you can practice with. Another thing you can do is you can also highlight text and hit backspace and it'll delete the whole thing you typed. And again, if you make a mistake, you can always use your undo. Okay, so now what we're going to do is do a little bit more practicing. So I'm going to go ahead and minimize this. And that link I sent you guys earlier that had the Google Drive information in it, we're going to take a recipe from here. And later, if you want to follow along with this, one thing to keep in mind is that you'll want to download the files instead of just opening them. This should open it in a browser window. So you'll want to make sure that you have internet access when you try to open this. And if you just click on it and open it, it'll open it inside of Google Drive automatically. So what you'll want to do instead is download it to your computer so it'll open inside of Word. So we're going to click on this little download button right here, and you'll notice it'll start downloading. And then I'm going to go ahead and click on it and open it. And on your computer, you may also get an enable editing button. So it's okay to go ahead and click on enable editing. This is just an extra bit of protection. So you always want to check and make sure that you're enabling the editing on something that is okay to edit. So something that's safe. So in this case, I know that this is safe. You can also enable editing on this document that we sent to you as well, because it's a safe document. So we'll go ahead and click on enable editing. And now we will be able to edit it. So we're going to take this document, and it's a recipe for a caprese salad. And we are going to fancy it up a little bit and fix. You'll see that it has some mistakes and it has some extra spacing. It has an old date on it and a couple of other things. So we're going to pretty this up a little bit. And like I mentioned before, if you have a computer, if you have an extra computer and kind of want to follow along, it's kind of hard sometimes to do that on Zoom. If you only have one monitor, it's easy to get a little bit lost. But you're welcome to follow along if you'd like. And please ask questions too if questions come up as we're doing this. So first, I'm going to zoom it a little bit just to make sure you guys can see this okay. And we're going to start at the top and start editing. So the first thing I'm going to do is I want to add a line after caprese salad. So I'm going to go ahead and put my cursor right here. So I'm just clicking here and I'm going to hit enter. And you'll see that it automatically put a line in, but you'll notice that it did some funky things, like now time needed has a little bit of indentation. So we want to get rid of that. So again, I'm going to undo this just so you can see that again. I'm going to put my cursor here and go ahead and hit enter. Go back to the line, and we want to get rid of this. So there's a couple of different ways we can get rid of this extra indentation. See how time is over to the right a little bit? We want it aligned right under caprese salad. So there's a couple of different ways you can do that. We talked about backspace earlier, but again, like I said, you have a couple of options. What we're going to do is I'm going to put my cursor right in front of time. So I clicked right in front of time. You can also use the arrow keys on your keyboard if that's easier for you. And I'm going to go ahead and hit backspace, and it will backspace that extra spacing there and take this back. So now you'll see that time needed is lined up with caprese salad. And another thing we're going to do is we want to bring this ingredients line down. So I put my cursor, I clicked right there after the period after tomatoes and right in front of ingredients. And I'm going to go ahead and hit enter. The next thing we're going to do is you'll notice here that we have directions twice. So we're going to get rid of one of those. Does anybody have suggestions on how to get rid of directions? There's a couple of options. Well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put my cursor right after the colon in directions, and I'm going to go ahead and hit backspace and keep hitting backspace or keep touching backspace until directions is gone. And I'm going to hit backspace one more time because I want to get rid of that extra space as well. So again, I use the backspace key. Go ahead and undo it. Just put my cursor here and I backspace to get rid of that. There's lots of different other ways you could get rid of that too. You could have highlighted it and hit delete on your keyboard, but we're trying to concentrate on practicing using the backspace key. So just keep in mind that the backspace key is on your keyboard, kind of towards the top next to the plus sign. And if you hit backspace, it goes back and deletes what's in front of it. So keep that in mind, or deletes what's in back of it, I guess you would say. Okay, another thing we're going to do is you'll see that this has an old date on it. So we're going to go ahead and use our backspace key again, and we put our cursor at the end. So we're going to go ahead and backspace. Until we get rid of that. And we want to keep the updated on. So we're going to put in today's date. So I'm going to start typing September. And you'll notice that Word has a nice little autocomplete feature. You can see this pop up. See how it says September 9th, 2021. I'm going to go ahead and press enter, and it'll finish putting that in for me. So that's a nice little feature in Word. So you'll see now it says updated on September 9th, 2021. And so we just practice using our backspace key, and we clean this up a little bit. But as you can see, we need to do a couple of other things. There's still some issues with this. So now we're going to do some copying and pasting. So copying and pasting is pretty powerful. It's probably one of my favorite tools that I really like to use. And the cool thing about copy and paste is that you can use it in a variety of other applications too. If you're typing an email, you can copy and paste from one email to another, or from a web page to an email. If you have a resume typed up and you need to put it into something else, you can always copy and paste it into another document as well, like into an application you're filling out online, that type of thing. So the first thing you do when you copy and paste is, I'm going to try to do this kind of slow. So first you want to select what you want to copy. So in this case, we're going to copy some of the ingredients. So first I'm going to copy one medium to large, or not copy, but select one medium to large tomato. So I'm going to select that with my mouse. And we're going to put this up above under ingredients. So I'm going to go ahead and get that ready first. So I'm going to put my cursor after ingredients and the colon after ingredients, and I'm going to go ahead and hit enter. And it'll give us a space where the cursor is for that. So I'm going to go back down here, and I'm going to select one medium to large tomato. So what we're going to do is we're going to copy and paste the ingredients from down here to up under ingredients. So I have this selected. So it's selected with my mouse, and you can see that it's gray. So I'm going to right click and do copy. And then we're going to go ahead and right click again. And we're going to do paste. Oh, and you see I kind of made a mistake here. So I put my cursor in between, in the middle of ingredients when I was pasting. I wasn't paying attention, but we can easily fix this. There's lots of different ways we can fix this. I'm just going to hit undo, and then it'll go back to where it was. So to fix that, I'm going to do this again. I'm going to put my cursor after the colon after ingredients, hit enter. And now we're going to paste again. So I still have that on my clipboard, and you'll see it put one medium to large tomato up there. So now we're going to get the basil leaves. So we're going to select this. And again, it's up to you how you feel comfortable selecting with your mouse. I usually go at the end and go to the front, or start at the front and go to the end. So go like this, right click and go to copy. And then make sure we have our cursor where that's the most important thing, is to make sure your cursor is where you want to paste it. So we can see the cursor is blinking right here. We're going to paste. And again, this is a work in progress, so this may not look the best, and you can still see there's some mistakes with it, but we're gonna continue fixing that. So now we're gonna take the fresh mozzarella cheese from over down here. And again, I selected, right-clicked, copied, we're gonna paste. So now we want the balsamic, excuse me, balsamic vinegar. So we're gonna go ahead and select this. And again, we can tell it's selected because it's all gray. We're gonna right-click, copy, and paste. And now we have our olive oil. So we're gonna select that, copy, and paste. And then we have salt and pepper to taste. I'm gonna copy that. And then we're gonna paste that. So did we get everything? Is there anything I missed? Looks like we have 1 medium to large tomato, fresh basil leaves, mozzarella cheese, vinegar, olive oil, and salt and pepper. Okay. So now what we're gonna do is delete our extra ingredients. So there's a couple of different ways you can do this. I'm gonna start with Backspace. I'm gonna click at the back of this and Backspace. Another thing you can do is you can select what you'd like to delete with your mouse and hit on delete. That's another way too. I'm gonna go ahead and finish backspacing here. So now we got all of our ingredients up here at the top under ingredients. So it's starting to look a little bit better as we're working on this, but we have a couple of other things to do. So the next thing we're gonna do is work on formatting the font. So we're gonna brighten it up a little bit and make it a little bit more fun. So let's talk a little bit about what a font is. So basically a font is kind of like handwriting for a computer. You can change what the type of the computer looks like. So you have a couple of different options with that. You can change the shape of the letters, which is the font face. You can change the color. So we could make caprese salad red or green or purple or whichever color we wanted. We can also change the size. So we can make caprese salad be a little bit bigger. We can make the whole recipe be a different font style, and also make the font size bigger if it's a little hard to read. So you have several different options. So let's also talk a little bit about the default font in Word. So does anybody know what the default font in Word is? And it a lot of times it depends on your setting too, but there is a default that Word comes set up with. And this is in our example, we're going to talk about 2016 Word. So oh, go ahead. You're not sure, that's fine. So there's a really easy way to tell. So I'll show you. We're going to go ahead and open a new document. So we're going to go to File and New and Blank Document. And the default font on this computer, and again, this can change, but this is out of the box most of the time. The default font is Calibra and it's 11 point size. So, and you can see that right here, we opened a new document. This is a blank document, and you'll see Calibra is right here and the font size is 11. So that's basically what it starts with when you start a new document, but you can always change that. And you can just change if you'd rather use something else, like if you'd rather use Arial when you're starting off, you can just change the font when you first start. And if you'd rather it be 12 size, you can change that as well. So I just went ahead and did that. And you'll see now it's Arial 12. And if I wanted to, I could change this line to a different font as well and change it back to Calibra and then change it to 11 too. So just keep in mind that the easiest way to change the font is to select what you'd like to change and then come up here and change it. And then you can change the font size here. And obviously the bigger the size, the bigger the font. So you can make it fairly large. I would caution you from using a whole bunch of different fonts in something, especially if you're doing like a letter or a resume. Generally, you want to stick with a, I guess you would say, plain professional font, and usually only use 1 or 2 fonts. And you can use different sizes to emphasize different headers and that type of thing. But generally, you don't want to use a whole bunch of fonts. You also want to use something that's easy to read too. So I'm going to go ahead and close that, and we'll go back to our recipe. So we're going to change the caprese salad to a different font. Does anybody have a favorite font that they really like or one you'd like to try? I can go ahead and pop this list up. So first, we're going to select caprese salad. Then we're going to click on this font drop box. And then is there one that someone wants to try? Just let us know in the chat. I'm going to start with Broadway just for fun so you can see how different that looks. You have, this is called brush script. Just keep in mind, this is a little bit harder to read, but it is kind of fun too. If we make it a little bit bigger, it's a little easier to read. I'm going to stick with broad. Oh, that one's kind of hard to read too. Maybe we'll do Arial rounded, but if anybody has any other suggestions, feel free to blurt them out. And you'll see this list of fonts is in alphabetical order too. So sometimes people know font names, other times people don't. It kind of depends on, I guess there's some people that are kind of font nerds and have favorite fonts and that they really like to use, but most people just know what they think looks good. So, and a lot of times sticking with the default is perfectly fine as well. So we're going to do Arial rounded. And then we're also going to change the font size. So let's try 24. And again, this is the same idea. You select what you'd like to change, go over here and change the font size. So you'll notice like if we do 48, it would be quite a bit bigger. I'm going to go ahead and go to 22. We're also going to go ahead and change the color. So if anyone has suggestions for a color they'd like, and you'll see it kind of gives you a preview as we're changing it. This is what red looks like. And again, this is, sorry, I should slow down a little bit. This is where the font color is. It's right up here. As you scroll over it, you'll see that there's a little pop-up that tells you the font color. And if you click on this drop down, it'll bring up a list, and you have some color. These are the colors that are in the theme we're currently using. So you can click on any of those and it'll show you a preview. And then there's also standard colors that are built into Word as well. So you can click on any of those. This is what purple or blue looks like. And then you also have more colors in the color wheel that you can click on that as well. Going to go ahead and go back. And again, that's that little drop down next to the font color where you get more options. So I'm going to click on dark green here just to see what that looks like. And we have some other options as well. We can also make this bold, which makes it stand out a little bit more. So again, I selected that and clicked on bold. And if you click it again, it'll undo it. Then you also have Italic, And then underline, so you can kind of see what that looks like. And when you underline it, it puts in a line underneath it. I'm gonna go ahead and undo that. And if you ever want to undo, you can always use the undo button, or you can just click on this again. So let me turn on the underline again. So it's underlined. If I want to undo the underline, if I keep it selected, I can either do undo, or I can just click on underline up here and it'll stop underlining. And see, the underline went away, other than our little squiggly up here because it doesn't like Caprice for some reason. But you also have, I'm going to go ahead and turn off the italic as well. But you have some other options in here like strike through, which a lot of people use this when they're editing something. We don't necessarily want to use that in here. And then you have subscript. Oh, sorry. That is, yeah, subscript. And then this is superscript. So now we have this and it's green, but if you wanted to change the color again, you could go back in here and pick a different color. I kind of like green, so we will keep it there. So another thing to keep in mind is anytime you're typing anything, you should have these options too. In Word, you would have the bold and italic available to you. And this is also available in the other Microsoft products like PowerPoint. You can make font different color, you can make text different color, and also change the text size. You'll also see similar buttons in other programs you're using as well. If you're typing an email, a lot of times you can also make it bold and change the font size too. It may just look a little bit different and be in a different place. But the most important thing is to make sure you highlight with your mouse what you'd like to change. Okay, so let's also, is there anything, let's see if there's anywhere else we'd also like to make some changes and maybe make some things bold or change some font sizes. What do you guys think? Do you have any suggestions? Well, how about if we start and make the ingredients be bold and also a little bit larger. We'll make that 14. Let's make the directions 14 as well in bold. Then we'll get rid of some of these spacing here. So it's looking a little bit better. We still have a couple of other things we need to work on, but now we learned how to change the text so we can change the color and the text, the font size. So another thing we're going to do is change the spacing or alignment. So you may notice that down here, Microsoft Word, a lot of times when you hit enter, actually puts in a double space. And maybe you don't like the way that looks. One thing you can do to fix that is you can delete the space in between. Let me go ahead and put it back in. So if you put your cursor here, you can always backspace and bring, in this case, we're bringing the ingredient back up, and you can do shift enter to get rid of it. But that's kind of a lot of work because you have to go in and do that on each line. So I'm going to go ahead and undo that. We'll keep it like this. You can also change the paragraph spacing. So first we're going to select this paragraph here. So we want to change the ingredients so it doesn't have as much spacing in between each line. So you can get to the paragraph spacing up here. So you'll see this little box, and you'll notice when we scroll our mouse over it, it says line and paragraph spacing. So we'll go ahead and click on that. And we're going to go into line spacing options. You have other options here, like you can do one and change this here, but we're going to go to line spacing options. And you'll notice down here that under spacing, and again, there's several options in here, but what we're going to do is we're going to change this spacing here where it says before and it has 0 points, and then after it has 8 points. So we're going to change this 8 to 0. And we're going to go ahead and click OK. And you'll see that got rid of some of the extra spacing for us. So it looks a little bit better and it doesn't look as spaced out and looks a little bit more professional. Just looks nicer without all that spacing. So we got rid of the spacing there. Another thing we're going to do is we're going to make the caprese salad title be centered on the page. So a lot of times, how many of you just hit the space key until this looks right? So you just space, hit the space bar. Sorry, it says space key, but I meant the space bar. You just keep hitting this until it looks kind of how you want it. Well, that's a lot of work, and sometimes it can also wear out your space bar, but you also, it's kind of hard to get it exactly in the middle. So there's an easier way to do that. So I'm going to go ahead and backspace. So we're going to select this because we just want caprese salad to be centered. And then you'll notice right here that there's paragraph spacing in here. So we're going to hit this middle button right here. And you'll notice that it says, when you scroll your mouse over it, it says center. So we're going to go ahead and click on that. And you'll also notice that it says center, and then in parentheses, it has Control E. So just as an aside, and we'll talk about this more, we have Ben made a nice little chart that shows the different keyboard shortcuts in Microsoft products and in Word. And we'll go over these at the end a little bit more because I don't want to be too confusing. But you can also use Control E if you can remember that. Control E will also center what you have selected as well. So keep that in mind. That's a shortcut key for center is Control E. And you'll see as you're scrolling over these, you'll also see there's other control keys like Control L will align left too. So I'm just going to align this left just to show you again. So that's what align left looks like. And then we're going to hit center again to center it. So now we have our title centered. The next thing we're going to do is justify our paragraph. So justification kind of makes it the type look nice and justifies it on the page. So this is this last, so it distributes it evenly within your margins. So we'll go ahead and apply that. And it doesn't look too different, but you may notice this justification quite a bit when you're reading books and novels and newspapers, that the spacing flows nice and fills up the page. And that's kind of what justification does. Okay. So now we're also, let's see here. So the same thing we did with our ingredient list, we're also going to do with our directions list. And we're also going to move the picture of the recipe down a little bit. So we're going to move it underneath the directions. So you have a couple of options you can copy. We're just going to copy it and then put our cursor where we want it. So I clicked on it to select it, and then I did right click and copy. You also have copy up here, just keep that in mind, but right click is an easy way to get to it. So we'll go to copy, and then we're just going to put our cursor right here, and we're going to paste it. And then we're going to get rid of the extra one up here. So I'm going to click on it again and then just hit delete on my keyboard. And we're going to get rid of some of these extra spaces. And so remember how we removed the extra spaces up here? We're going to do the same thing down here. So we're going to select the directions. And remember, this is under our line spacing. So we're going to go in here, click on the drop down line spacing options, and we're going to change the after to 0. Whoops. Go ahead and click OK. And then now it looks a little bit better. We're going to add an extra space in between the directions and the picture of the recipe. So we're getting there. It's starting to look better and better each time. So the next thing we're gonna do are bullets. But my nose keeps running, so I'm gonna take a little bit of a break. I'm gonna turn the camera off real quick and blow my nose and also put me on mute so you don't have to hear it. But I'll be back in a couple of seconds. So if you, well, probably about a minute or so, if you guys wanna get up and stretch a little bit, I'm just gonna turn my camera off really quick.
You can also use this time to post any questions you might have.
Okay, I'm back. Thanks, guys. Sorry about that. Okay, so we've done quite a few things. We've changed the font color and font size of the title of our recipe. We've made the ingredients look a little bit better. We've changed the line of the ingredients and increased that font. We moved the picture, but you'll still see we have a couple of things we need to fix. So the next thing we're gonna do is add some bullets. So you guys may have seen bullets like in a resume or in a recipe, which we'll show you here in a little bit. And bullets are usually used for unordered lists. So if you're doing something where it's just a list of things and it doesn't matter, like they're not steps, you would usually use a bullet. And we'll talk more about in the directions, we'll do a numbered list. So the bullets are up here. So you'll see right here, you can create a bulleted list. They're right here in the paragraph section. And again, we're still in the home tab and you'll see the bullets right here under the paragraph section. And if you click on the drop down, there's different bullets that you can select. But first we're gonna select the list that we wanna add the bullets to. So we're gonna select our list of ingredients right here. So we have it all selected. And what I did is I clicked my mouse at the beginning of the list and then went down to the bottom. So click up here right before one and then move your mouse to the bottom of the list. And I'm gonna go ahead and just click on bullets and you'll see that the bullets get added. But you can also click on this drop down if you wanna do them like a check mark. You have several different options. If you like more of the circle, the square. I kind of like the check mark. So I'm going to put the check mark in for the ingredients. But that's kind of nice that you can use whichever bullet you like. You can also add in your own bullets, but that's a little bit more advanced. But that's nice to have some options there. And again, remember, if you mess up, you can always undo, or if you don't like this bullet, you can always change it to a regular bullet. So we're gonna do something similar with the directions, but we're gonna make it an ordered list so that it'll have numbers. So we're gonna select the directions down here, the text for the directions. Again, I'm gonna put my cursor at the beginning of the list and then move to the back. And we're gonna select this first numbered list. And again, you have options if you'd rather do A, B, C, or if you'd rather have a bracket after the number, you can do that too. I kind of like this first one, so I'm gonna just check the 1 or click on the 1, 2, and 3, and you'll see it changes that for us. So now we have 3 steps in the directions. So it's starting to look better and better. So another thing we want to do is, you may notice that this recipe has a spelling error. You may not have noticed it at first, but right here, I know caprese, it keeps saying that that's misspelled, but that's spelled correct. So what we can do is click on ignore all, and that red line will go away. So I right clicked on that, and we'll go to ignore all, and that red line will go away under caprese. But you'll notice right here, we also have a red line under wonderful. Oh, one thing I should mention is that these squiggly lines like this are just grammar and spelling checks. And when you go to print, which we'll be talking about printing, but we get questions about this a lot, like whether these lines, how can I get these lines to go away so they don't print? But they won't print if you leave it like this. Obviously, you wouldn't want to print something with spelling errors before fixing them, but sometimes these pop up and the word is spelled correctly or the grammar is okay. And if you do print it, the squiggly lines won't show up. I'll show you that really quick. If we go to print, and again, we'll talk about this more, but see, the squiggly lines aren't showing up in here. I'll zoom in a little bit. So, I mean, you would want to fix wonderful before we print this, but the squiggly line doesn't show up in the print, just so you know that. But it's an even better idea to fix those errors before you print first anyway. So we're also going to fix wonderful. So we're going to right click on that, and then it'll usually it gives you a suggestion, unless sometimes I will spell a word totally wrong and it has no idea what it is. So if the word isn't showing up correctly, you can always go, if it's not giving you a good suggestion, or you know that's not the right word. A lot of times it does a pretty good job, but sometimes, like I said, if you're like me, you may totally mistype it. You can always look up the word in the dictionary, or ask a friend or a coworker to help you out, or also go online and try to Google the correct way to spell it as well. So then you'll notice down here that we also have season to taste, and it doesn't like that extra space. So, and that's showing that as a grammar error. So if we right click on that, we can click on to taste, and it'll take care of that extra spacing. So you'll notice now that all our squiggly lines are gone. But I'm going to go ahead and undo that really quick, just because I want to show you another way that you can fix that too. So clicking on it when you have a short document just like this, when you only have a couple of mistakes, is an easy way to fix it. Again, I right clicked on that and then clicked on wonderful. But you can also go to the review tab and do spelling and grammar check there. So this will check your whole thing, your whole document for you. So we're going to go ahead and click on that. And it'll give you suggestions over here on the side. So it found wonderful. Yes, that looks good. So we're going to go ahead and click on change. And it'll also tell you what the word means. So that's kind of nice too. So you can see that. And again, if this was spelled correctly, because sometimes it'll catch things like it caught caprese, and it was spelled correctly, but it wanted to change it. You can always say ignore if you know it's spelled correctly too. That happens a lot with names. When you type people's names, if their name is unusual or maybe spelled a little bit different than normal, sometimes it'll think that it's misspelled, but you can always say ignore, or you can add it to your computer's dictionary too, and that should keep it from flagging it most of the time. So but in this case, we're going to go ahead and click on change. And then it also found the season to taste as a grammar error because of the extra space. So we'll go ahead and click change. And again, it tells you the reasoning behind the change, which is nice. So it tells you that you may have inserted some extra spaces. So we're going to go ahead and click on change there. And then we'll get a little pop-up telling us that spelling and grammar check is complete. And again, you'll notice that all our squigglies are gone. And if we wanted to, we could undo it and our grammar and spell check would come back. But we kind of want to keep it this way with it corrected. So we'll leave it like that. Okay, something else we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and go back to our home menu here. Another thing you can do is change the margin. So let's think about this a little bit. So a margin basically changes the white and blank space around a document. So usually the default in Word is that it has a 1-inch margin all the way around. So you'll see here, this is under layout. I went to the layout tab and then we clicked the drop down under margins, and you'll see here that normal is what Word is usually set to. So it'll have a top margin of 1 inch. So it's 1 inch up here at the top. And then it's usually 1 inch at the bottom and 1 inch on the right. Whoops, this is right. And 1 inch on the left. So you can see that it has 1 inch all the way around. Now, if you want, you can change it to narrow and you'll see that it moves things up and moves things over on both sides. So with the narrow margins, it has a 0.5 margin at the top, 0.5 margin on the left, 0.5 margin on the right, and a 0.5 margin on the bottom. It's kind of hard to see on the bottom because our document doesn't go all the way down to the bottom, but you get the idea. So that's kind of how the margins work. So think a little bit about why you might want to change a margin. Can you guys think of some reasons when you might want to change the margin to either make it smaller or bigger? Well, one thing I can think of is a lot of times we have people that may have just one line of their document going to another page, and maybe it's a resume and they want to keep it to one page. Sometimes if you change the margins to a little bit smaller, it'll help with that. You do want to be careful though. You don't want to make your margins too small because that can also make it kind of hard to read. And in this case, I'm going to go ahead and change this back to normal. But can you guys think of any other reasons why you might want to change the margin? Yep, exactly, Rob, to fit more data on the sheet. Yep, fit an Excel spreadsheet to show. That happens a lot with Excel, another good example. Yeah, a lot of times it's if you want to fit more data on the sheet and just so you're not printing as many pages as well. Okay, so like I said, I changed this back to 1 inch. So now we have 1 inch at the top, 1 inch on the sides, and 1 inch at the bottom. So now we're going to talk a little bit about saving. So saving can be a little confusing sometimes. So we'll try to go over this a little bit. And if this is something you're having issues with, you can always set up an appointment with us too. We have what we call book a librarian appointments at the Advanced Learning Library, and you can set up an hour with one of the staff members here. It's usually one of the technology trainers, and we can go over topics with you. Like, let's say you want to learn more about the difference between save and save as in Word or in Microsoft products. We can go over that with you and do some practicing to help you understand that a little bit better. We'll always be glad to help you with that, but hopefully some of what we go over today will help with that too. So usually save as is for new documents. So in this case, if we wanted to save this, we would do a save as because and we want to rename it as well. So usually that's when you would use a save as. Another time you would use save as is if you made changes to a document and you want to make a copy or name it a new name. Like let's say you have 2 resumes, like you have a resume for a teacher job, and then let's say you have a resume for a college professor job. You would want to save those with different names so you know which one is which. Or if you had an updated recipe, like if you took this caprese salad and you made it with a different type of cheese, you could save different copies of the recipe for that as well. And save is usually if you make a quick change to a previously saved document. So let's say that you have like a resume and your phone number changed. So you go into your resume and you change your phone number, then you would save it because you made a quick change. You wouldn't want 2 copies of it, but you just want to make the changes. You would want to save the changes that you made. Does that make sense? So let's think about this a little bit. If you wanted to save a new copy of a file, would you use save or would you use save as? Rob, I just saw your question. We'll get to that. If you wanted to make a copy, you would actually use save as because you would want to make a different copy. And Rob asked best practices on how to name your documents and save them. Everybody probably has different ideas about best practices, but we're going to go ahead and name this file here in a second and do a save as. So, and I'll give you some of my best practices. Yeah, if you have problems finding an older document, yeah, that can be kind of hard sometimes. And I'll give you some tips, and Ben may have some tips when we go over that too. So give me just a second here. Okay, so what we're gonna do is we're gonna go ahead and do a save as on this. So let's step back a second. So you'll see up here that when I downloaded this document, it already had a name and it was called Basics Example Recipe, but we want to save it with a different name. So we're going to do a save as, because if you were looking for Basics Example Recipe for caprese salad, do you think you would find it if it was named Basics Example Recipe? Probably not, because you're going to be looking for caprese salad, or you might be looking when you saved it. So we're going to save it with a different name. Another thing to keep in mind, you may notice here, just as an aside, because you may have wondered this, you may notice that it named it Basics Example Recipe, and then it had 1 in parentheses. This is because I downloaded it twice, and it was the same document that I downloaded twice. And this is the second time I opened the document. So that's why it has a 1 after it, because I downloaded it twice. So this is the second copy. I don't know if I explained that very well, but it was named the same thing. So I had to rename it with a 1 after it so that it didn't save over the top of the other one. So I'm going to go to save as here because we want to name this with a different name. And then you'll notice that it has these options here. So you can save it to OneDrive, which is cloud storage online if you happen to have OneDrive. You can save it to this PC or you can browse. It'll also show you where, in this case, I already have this document saved in downloads because I downloaded it and it saved it to my computer in downloads. So it's showing me where it's currently saved. One tip is if you're saving a document to keep for later, I usually wouldn't save it in your downloads because a good practice is to go in and clean out your downloads, because if you download a lot of stuff, it can fill up pretty fast. So it's kind of a good idea to go in and clean up your downloads every once in a while. So I wouldn't save documents in there that you necessarily want to keep. Again, that may be personal preference. You may like to keep stuff in your downloads, but usually what I recommend is that you save documents inside of your documents folder, or so documents is right here. You can also save it on your desktop if you like, but I prefer to save stuff in your documents. So we're going to go into documents. You can also, if you have a flash drive, your flash drive would probably, if you had a flash drive plugged in or a hard drive plugged in, it may show up in here as well. And it would show up in this area where local disk or ThawSpace is showing up in here. So in this case, we're going to save it to documents. So you'll see here that we're clicking on documents. You can also see that you have desktop right here. And you have documents. So some tips when you're saving documents is to keep, one thing you can do is keep stuff in folders. So in this case, I could create a new folder and call it recipes. So the new folder button was right here. I did that kind of fast. So I went to new folder and then I renamed it. We'll call this one recipes 2. I'm going to delete that just so. So you create a new folder and then you name it. Another thing you can do is if you're doing something that's chronological, like a lot of times if you're saving meeting minutes or something like that, you may want to have a first level folder called minutes, and then inside of there have folders for each year or each month. That's kind of another way that helps you find stuff. So a couple of things you can do is have some good file structure. So have folders to keep stuff in. And then you want to think about the name. So a lot of times you don't want to keep the name that Microsoft gives your documents, because you'll notice earlier, a lot of times it'll just name something, well, we're in here, so it's not, but I'll show you an example later. But a lot of times it'll just name your document like document 1 and document 2. And that's not going to help you find it later. So a lot of times it's a good idea to name the file something meaningful to you that you can remember. And if you can also put a date in there. So in this case, we're going to name this caprese salad. So you'll notice that we're also under our recipes. So I went into documents and then I'm in the recipe folder. So we'll call this caprese salad September 2021. So a lot of times if you can put a date in the name, that'll help you find it. And that's what we do a lot with our names of files that we save here in the library, especially our presentations. We'll put the name of the presentation and then put the date of the presentation. That way you know when it was created. You can also see the creation, you can see when the file was last edited, but sometimes you want to know when the file was presented to, because someone may have edited it after that. So it's a good idea to name it something meaningful and also put a date in it. And a lot of times you may also want to put who created it as well. If you share a computer with someone, that may not mean as much. And it will also show the author down here. But a lot of times that can just depend on who the copy of the Office product is licensed to. So it may show your office, someone in your office, or your corporation name or that type of thing. Or it can also show the person, if you have a document that you, yeah, that's a good tip, Ben. And I'll get to Ben's tip in a second. It may show the name of the person that edited the document last. So in this case, this recipe was created by someone named Henry. So you can see his name down here and it still shows his name. So you may also want to put in the file name a little bit of something like initials or something like that, so people know who created it. It just kind of depends on if you're sharing a computer with someone. And Ben mentioned for the date, you can't use slashes, so you have to use hyphens. So that's a good tip. It sees slashes as, that's a no, I was going to say no bueno, but not a good thing in file names. So in this case, I could put, instead of September, I could put 09/09/21. because we have to use slashes and, oh, yeah, we have to use hyphens instead of slashes, sorry. So it kind of depends on how your brain works. If it works better for you to see September, or if you'd rather see 9/9/29. But it helps a lot to have dates when you're finding a file, just so you know when that file was created or when you made it. I don't know if anyone else has any other tips. I think the best thing is to name it something meaningful that makes sense for what the file is. Like if you're doing a resume, a lot of times you'll want to, like, if I was making a resume for me, I would say Janelle Mercer resume, and then I would put, if it was a library resume, I might put library resume in there. So I might say Janelle Mercer library resume, and then put the date it was created, just so I know when it was made. I mean, you don't want a really long file name because that makes it hard to, that makes it kind of obnoxiously long, and it takes up a lot of, not space file wise, but takes up, yeah, that's another good tip, Ben. So we'll talk about that in a second with how it'll sort the file. Oh, go ahead, Ben.
So one thing I ran into this with keeping minutes for a group or something. If you have, if you put the year first and then the month, it'll sort by the year. So you could say 2021-09 minutes or something. And then when it sorts it, it'll put the years together, and then the months will be in order because it'll sort by the number.
Oh, that's a good tip.
That's a one way to organize, keep things organized. So then if you're going back to look it up in your file, it'll be in order.
Okay, so I have this named Caprese Salad 09/09/21. I'm going to go ahead and click save. And you'll notice after we named it that it changed the file name up here. Whoops, changed the file name up here at the top. So now the document is called Caprese Salad 09/09/21. And I'm going to go ahead and minimize this. Oh, that's because it's on my other screen. I will bring this over. And you'll see if we go into the documents that you'll see I have my recipes folder. And there's Caprese Salad. Another thing, like Ben was mentioning with the numbers, it'll also put your files in order. If you sort them by name, it'll sort them in alphabetical order. You can also do reverse alphabetical order. And you guys probably already know this as well. This isn't a good example because I don't have a lot of files in here, but if I go to my downloads, that might be better. Probably not. This isn't a good computer to show examples on because it gets wiped every time it gets restarted. So, which basically means the files get taken off of it. It gets put back just like our library computers do, or the library patron computers do. But it'll usually put your files in order. Like Ben was mentioning, if you do the year and then the month, it'll do it by numbers, then it does it in order alphabetically as well. So, but it's also good, and it kind of just depends on how your brain works. So you want to make sure that you use names that make sense to you. So when you're searching for them, so if I go back here and I'm like, oh, I know I saved a recipe for Caprese salad, where is it? So if I start searching for Caprese salad, or excuse me, Caprese, it'll pop up here and you can find it easily. Although I'm really going to confuse it because I have the file open already, but just keep that in mind. You have to think of, just use meaningful names and things that mean something to you or something to someone else. If you're sharing a computer with somebody, or if you're working with people at work that multiple people work on files, it's good to come up with a naming convention, or even just do something that would make sense to other people as well. That was a good question, Rob. Thank you for answering that. Does anybody else have any questions related to file names or any other suggestions? Okay, so we're gonna go back to this. So let's say that we want to make a quick change, like, I don't like that this caprese, I don't like this color of green. Let's try a different color of green. Oh, I don't like that one either. So let's try this color of red. So you can also, so we want to save these changes because we like it better. We want to keep this. So we can go to file, and would we use, since we just made a change to it and we want to keep the same file, would we use save or would we use save as in this instance? Because we just want to make a change to the file. In this case, we'd want to use save, and then it'll save it for us. Another thing to keep in mind as you're making changes to your document, you can also use the save icon right here, and Control S will also work. So this little, it looks just like a floppy disk for those of you that are used to use floppy disks. There's a little save icon right here. You can click on that. And if you're working on an important document, I would actually recommend that you, when you first get started working on it, that you save it as a name that means something to you, especially if you're working on something like a resume. Go in and name it and save it periodically so that you have your changes, just in case like the power goes out in the middle of what you're working on or something else like that. It's always good to save periodically as you go, especially if you're working on something important that you spent a lot of time on. Okay, so now we're going to talk a little bit about printing. So we're going to go over here and go to print. And again, this is in our Backstage View. So this is under File and then Print. And you'll see right here, it automatically gives you a print preview so you can see what it's going to look like. And if you can't see it very well, you can always use the zoom over here to zoom in a little bit. And if you like it, you can go ahead and click on print right here. But another thing you want to check is make sure that you have the right printer selected. Sometimes there'll be a weird Windows update or an update on your computer, and it may show a different printer. So just make sure that it's showing the right printer. So sometimes you may see Microsoft Print to PDF, which you might want to use if you want to save something as a PDF. But you want to make sure that the right printer is showing up wherever you want to print. So just check this list and make sure that it's showing the right printer. If it's not, select it. Ours is kind of weird because it's set up with the library printer, the library printer program. But here you may see like your Epson or your Hewlett Packard printer listed here, or your HP printer.
Rob asked a question.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. Oh, one reason you might save to PDF is if you were sending something that you wanted to make sure everyone could open. A lot of times everyone can open a PDF. PDF stands for portable document format. So it's something that a lot of people can open. Like not everyone has Word on their computers and not everyone has PowerPoint. So if you save a PowerPoint as a PDF, that makes it so people can easily open it and read it. It also is a good tip if you're sending someone something that you don't want them to be able to easily change and you want to keep the formatting intact. That's another reason you might use PDF as well. There's some other reasons too, but it's just a document format that's easy for people to read. And easy, I guess I should say easy for their computers or their equipment to open would be the better way to say it. So almost every computer can read or can open a PDF. Good question. Yeah, well, people can edit it if they have special, it's just harder to edit, I guess would be a good way to say it. Not everybody can edit it. You have to have a little bit more computer knowledge and have certain software to edit it. But yeah, it's a little harder to edit. There's other ways you can protect documents too. That's a little bit more advanced, but you can also add some security to them too, so that only certain people can open them and that type of thing as well. Okay, so when you're printing, you also have several options. You can print just a certain page. We only have one page in this example, but let's say you're trying to print like in your resume and you only want to print like the first page, or you're printing an article from the internet and you only want to print a certain page. You can print the whole thing or a certain page, or do like a custom print where you just have it print only one page. And this isn't a good example because I don't have options in here, but and there are several other options in here too if you wanted to print a different size of paper and that type of thing. But if everything looks okay, you can just click on print and then it'll send it to your printer. If you are saving it as a PDF, what it would do is save it to your computer so you could send it to someone or use it for something else. Okay, so we went over most of our things. Thank you, we appreciate that. Okay, we went over most of our content, but I'm going to go back to the PowerPoint just to go over a couple more things. I'm going to go ahead and minimize our document. Actually, I'm going to go ahead and close it. Minimize this and open the PowerPoint back up. One thing I did mention this, but I don't think I stressed it enough. There's always multiple ways to do things. It's kind of whatever you're comfortable with. You can use the toolbar, which is most of what we did today. And we also used right click. You can also use keyboard shortcuts if you're more comfortable with that. And we have a list of keyboard shortcuts in here that I'll get to in a second. And in that link that we sent at the beginning of the chat, and we'll post it again here in a little bit. Ben, if you don't mind, could you please post that again, as well as the link to the evaluation? Ben will post that, and that'll have link to this presentation, the practice recipe that we used, and a couple of other things as well. So these are some screenshots that Ben took that are excellent. So these are good to look at as well if you want a little bit more help with the ribbon. So this is a table that shows the different shortcuts. So these are the common ones, like Control+C is copy, Control+P is print. This is something that you could maybe put out by your computer, and this should work in most Microsoft documents, or most of Microsoft products, not documents, but that works too. And where it doesn't have a control, but it has the key. So this is talking about the home key that's next to your number pad on your computer. There's a home key there, and that'll take you to the beginning of the line. And there's also the end key, which will take you to the end. Those are pretty handy, and you can also use those with control keys. And the control key we're talking about is right underneath the shift on both sides of your keyboard. And then there's also shift on both sides of your keyboard too, if we mention shift. And then the F3 keys are at the top of your keyboard by escape. You should see those up there. If you have a laptop, some of these keys may be in different spots. So thank you for attending today. If you have any questions, you can always call us at 261-8500, which is the number to the Advanced Learning Library. And we can set up one-on-one computer help. A lot of times, if you also have a quick question, we can help you over the phone too. But we do have our Book a Librarian service where we offer one-on-one help. Usually we do an hour at a time. We'll be glad to help you with something. We do recommend that you set up an appointment just to make sure that we're available at a good time for you. And again, my name is Janelle Mercer, and this is my email address. And I was lucky enough to have Ben here with me today, and this is his email address. So thank you so much, and we'll be glad to stay. I'll probably turn off the recording, but we'll be glad to stay if you guys have any questions.